What if the next global power shift doesn't start in Washington, Beijing, or Moscow, but in a country most people scroll past on the map? What if the future of trade, technology, and influence is quietly being rewritten in Southeast Asia, and Malaysia is standing right at the center of it? In 2026, something strange is happening. Headlines whisper, diplomats visit, corporations move, satellites track, and yet most of the world isn't paying attention. Not loudly, not openly, but behind closed doors, governments, investors, and intelligence agencies are all asking the same question: why Malaysia? Welcome to Geo Chronicles, the channel where hidden power, silent shifts, and unseen global forces come to light. Here, we don't just tell you what's happening, we show you why it matters before the world feels the impact. Malaysia isn't shouting for attention, it's positioning. While superpowers clash in public, this nation is building something in silence, something that could reshape Asia and maybe the entire world order. Tonight, we uncover the signals everyone else is missing, the moves beneath the surface, the reason the world is watching without making a sound. Point 1. The perfect storm of geography. Empires have always risen from geography. Control the crossroads, and you control the future. Malaysia sits on one of the most powerful choke points on Earth, the Strait of Malacca. Nearly 1/3 of global trade flows through this narrow corridor. Every oil tanker heading to East Asia, every container ship feeding global supply chains, every economy that depends on maritime trade depends on this passage. In 2026, as global tensions rise and shipping routes become political weapons, this strait becomes more than water. It becomes leverage. The world has learned a brutal lesson. Trade is no longer just business, it is power. Wars in Europe, instability in the Middle East, and rivalry in the Pacific have exposed how fragile global supply lines really are. A single disruption can shake markets, crash currencies, and empty shelves thousands of miles away. And right in the middle of that vulnerability stands Malaysia. Unlike flashier neighbors, Malaysia doesn't posture. It balances. It maintains open doors with China, the United States, the Gulf states, and its ASEAN partners. While others choose sides, Malaysia becomes the bridge, the neutral ground, the place where goods still flow when politics fail. Ports expand, infrastructure modernizes, digital tracking systems replace outdated logistics. Quietly, Malaysia is transforming itself into a global artery, one that the world cannot afford to lose. This is why intelligence briefings mention Kuala Lumpur, why defense analysts map Malaysian coastlines, why corporations shift warehouses and reroute supply chains through this nation. When the world fractures, the countries that keep it connected become priceless. Malaysia isn't just sitting on history's crossroads, it is the crossroads. And in a fractured world, that makes it powerful beyond imagination. Point 2. The silent tech awakening. While the world debates the future of technology, Malaysia is quietly building it. In 2026, power is no longer measured only in weapons or oil. It is measured in chips, in data centers, in rare components smaller than a fingernail, yet capable of controlling entire civilizations. Whoever controls the digital bloodstream controls the future. And here's what most people don't realize. Malaysia is already one of the world's most critical semiconductor hubs. For decades, global tech giants have embedded themselves deep into Malaysian soil. Intel, AMD, Infineon, Texas Instruments, names that shape the modern world, operating behind factory walls in Penang and Kulim, far from the spotlight of Silicon Valley. Now, as the US-China tech war escalates, the world is desperate for a neutral ground, a place to manufacture without political explosions, a nation trusted by both sides. Malaysia fits perfectly. New chip plants rise in silence. Billions in foreign investment flow in without drama. Engineers train, research centers expand, entire supply chains relocate away from tension towards stability. This isn't hype, it's survival. Every smartphone, every electric car, every missile system, every AI server, they all depend on components Malaysia helps produce. And as export bans, sanctions, and cyber conflicts grow, Malaysia becomes a technological lifeline. The world's future won't be powered only by code. It will be powered by the places that build the machines behind that code. Malaysia is becoming one of those places. Not with speeches, not with threats, but with infrastructure. And in the age of digital warfare, infrastructure is destiny. While the world argues about who will control tomorrow, Malaysia is quietly assembling it, piece by microscopic piece. That is why the future is watching, even if it hasn't said a word yet. Point 3. The power of neutrality in a divided world. In a world splitting into rival camps, neutrality is no longer weakness, it is strategy. By 2026, the global order feels like a chessboard on fire. The United States and China circle each other. Russia redraws borders. Europe fortifies itself. Alliances harden. Trade becomes weaponized. Even friendships between nations feel temporary. And in the middle of this growing storm, Malaysia chooses a different path. It doesn't shout allegiance. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't turn diplomacy into spectacle. Instead, Malaysia becomes something rare, trusted by everyone. Washington sees it as stable. Beijing sees it as respectful. The Middle East sees it as a bridge. ASEAN sees it as balance. When others are forced to pick sides, Malaysia keeps conversations alive. This is why international summits quietly migrate to Kuala Lumpur, why back-channel talks happen in Malaysian hotels, why defense and trade delegations arrive without press releases. In an era where every meeting feels like a statement, Malaysia offers a space without headlines, and that is power. History shows us something important. When empires clash, neutral ground becomes sacred. When dialogue dies elsewhere, it survives in places that refuse extremes. Switzerland played this role in the 20th century. Now, in the 21st, Southeast Asia needs its own anchor. Malaysia is becoming that anchor, not because it dominates, but because it listens. In a divided world, the nation that can host everyone becomes indispensable. Deals are shaped there. Futures are negotiated there. Crises are softened there. Malaysia is positioning itself as the room where the world still talks. And when the world can no longer agree, the place where it still meets becomes the place that matters most. This isn't accidental. It's deliberate, and the world knows it, even if it never says it out loud. Point 4. The capital migration no one is talking about. Money moves before history does. Long before borders change, long before headlines explode, long before the world realizes something is wrong. Capital is already leaving the old centers of gravity. In 2026, investors are nervous. Markets swing on rumors. Sanctions rewrite business maps overnight. Cities once considered untouchable now feel politically fragile.
Wealth is searching for a new kind of home, one that is modern, connected, stable, and quietly powerful. And Malaysia is answering that call. Global funds are flowing into Kuala Lumpur. Regional headquarters are relocating. Family offices, fintech startups, Islamic finance giants, and multinational corporations are planting roots, not with fanfare, but with calculation. Malaysia offers something rare: political continuity, strategic neutrality, low operational risk, deep regional access, a young, skilled workforce, and a legal financial system trusted by East and West. It is becoming a safe harbor in an unsafe world. In an age where wealth can vanish with a single regulation, billion-dollar decisions are no longer about returns alone. They're about survival. Where can money exist without becoming a target? Where can companies grow without being dragged into geopolitical wars? Where can futures be built without choosing sides? More and more, the answer is Malaysia. Luxury towers rise, data centers expand, banking systems modernize, entire economic ecosystems quietly shift eastward, not toward chaos, but toward calm. This is how global power changes now, not with invasions, not with declarations, but with relocation. When capital chooses a country, it chooses its future, and the world's money is beginning to choose Malaysia. By the time everyone notices, the center of gravity will already be gone.
Point 5. The future hub of a rising Asia. The 21st century does not belong to the West alone. It belongs to Asia. By 2026, this truth is impossible to ignore. The fastest-growing cities, the youngest populations, the most ambitious markets, they are no longer centered around old capitals. They are rising across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and the Indo-Pacific. And Malaysia sits at the heart of that transformation. It is not the loudest nation, it is not the largest, but it is positioned perfectly between giants: India to the west, China to the north, the Pacific world to the east, the Islamic world to the Middle East. Malaysia becomes the connector of civilizations. As ASEAN evolves into one of the most powerful economic blocs on Earth, Malaysia emerges as its stabilizing core, not dominating, not resisting, coordinating. Rail networks stretch across borders, digital corridors replace old trade routes, universities attract minds from every continent, airports become crossroads of ambition. This is not just growth, it is transformation. Where others race, Malaysia orchestrates. Where others compete, Malaysia connects. In the coming decades, the world's future won't be decided in one capital. It will be shaped across regions by networks, corridors, alliances, and ecosystems. And Malaysia is quietly becoming the hub of that system. The place where East meets West, where Islam meets technology, where tradition meets tomorrow. Every rising era has a gateway. In the industrial age, it was London. In the digital age, it was Silicon Valley. In the Asian century, the gateway is forming in Southeast Asia. And at its center, Malaysia is waiting, not to announce itself, but to become unavoidable. History rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with sirens. It doesn't pause for permission. It moves quietly through boardrooms, ports, data centers, and diplomatic corridors, while the world is busy watching something else. In 2026, Malaysia is not demanding attention. It is earning inevitability. While others compete for dominance, Malaysia is building relevance. While powers clash in public, Malaysia is shaping outcomes in silence. While headlines chase conflict, Malaysia is preparing for continuity.
This is how true influence is born. Not in noise, not in spectacle, but in position. One day, the world will look back and ask, when did Malaysia become so important? And the answer will be unsettling. It already was. We just weren't listening. This is Geo Chronicles, where hidden forces become visible, and tomorrow is uncovered before it arrives. If you want to stay ahead of the shifts that will redefine our world, subscribe now, because the next global story won't start where everyone is looking. It will start where everyone stayed silent, and by then, it may already be too late to catch up.